They laughed at him, dismissed him, thought he wouldn't fight back, until one flawlessly timed move left the entire school speechless. The first thing William Mercer noticed about Redmond High was how immaculate everything seemed. Not just tidy, pristine, controlled. Glass windows reflected the world too perfectly. Floors gleamed under harsh fluorescent lights, and the hallways stretched out in rigid order, unnatural for a place filled with teenagers. It was nothing like his old school in Birmingham, Alabama, where student-painted murals covered the walls, and a stairwell always echoed with someone beatboxing. Redmond High felt lifeless. His mother had called the move a fresh start. His father, always blunt, labeled it a necessity. William hadn't decided what to call it yet, but the moment he stepped inside, he felt the weight of eyes on him. Not outright stares, too obvious. Just quick glances, hushed murmurs, subtle once-overs before looking away. Each one silently asking the same question. Who's this guy? At 5 feet 10 inches, William wasn't small for 16. Years of training had built him, lean, disciplined muscle. His movements precise, posture unwavering. Never slouching, never unsure. Yet to them, he was an outsider. Because he was. He reached the front office without trouble, collected his schedule from an overly polite receptionist, and turned to leave. That's when he saw them. A group near the lockers. At the center, a tall, broad-shouldered guy, with effortlessly styled blonde hair, leaning back like he owned the place. 2 others flanked him, laughing at something he'd just said. Not loud, just enough to be heard. Just enough for the intended target to know. They were the punchline. William wasn't the target, yet, but he recognized the calculation. The blonde guy, Ryan Callowell, according to the roster William skimmed earlier, met his gaze. Not outright hostile, but not welcoming either. It was a look William had seen before. A look that asked, "Should I make you a problem?" Ryan smirked, leaned toward his friends, muttered something just low enough to be missed. They chuckled, looked at William a little too long. Exhaling slowly, William walked past them, ignoring it. He had nothing to prove. His father's words echoed in his head. The same lesson drilled into him 100 times. Strength isn't about showing off. It's about knowing when to walk away. So he did. But guys like Ryan don't like being ignored. And this wouldn't be their last encounter. William had been at Redmond High less than a week, but he already understood the rules. The school had its own unspoken structure, a quiet hierarchy that didn't need explanation. Athletes ruled. The rich acted like royalty. Everyone else just found ways to blend in. William, he was in between. Not loud, not looking for trouble, but not afraid either. And that alone made him noticeable. Ryan Callowell thrived on easy prey. Kids who shrank, who laughed nervously, who had no idea how to push back. William wasn't one of them, but Ryan was determined to make him one. It started small, in the hallways. A shoulder bump, intentional. A muttered, "Watch where you're going," just loud enough for William to catch. A notebook knocked from his desk in history class, accidentally, of course. Each time, Ryan flashed that smirk, like he was testing something, waiting for a reaction. William gave him nothing. Then came the remarks. "Didn't know they let kids from the hood in here." "Mercer, ever thought about football? I mean, your people are good at that, right? You're quiet. No smart comebacks? Thought guys like you were supposed to be funny." The worst part, Ryan never said it loud enough for a teacher to catch. Always just quiet enough to be dismissed as a joke. Just subtle enough that he could shrug, feign innocence if called out. And the others? They laughed. Not all of them, but enough. Enough to make William's hands tighten under his desk. He considered telling his dad, but he already knew the answer. Handle it with discipline. Don't stoop to their level. His mom? She'd worry. She'd tell him to talk to a teacher. And William knew that wouldn't change a thing. No way the school would punish one of its star athletes over something they couldn't prove. So, he handled it the way he always did. He ignored it. At least that was the plan. Until one moment changed everything. Friday. Lunch period. William had just sat down with his tray, minding his own business, when a shadow fell across his table. Ryan. Behind him, Zach and Brandon, his usual entourage. Grinning, Ryan raised his voice just enough for nearby tables to hear. "Man, I've been wondering, how come you don't talk much, Mercer? Cat got your tongue." William didn't answer. He took a slow bite of his food. That wasn't good enough. Ryan reached down, grabbed the apple off William's tray, and tossed it across the cafeteria. It hit the floor near the drink station with a dull thud. A few heads turned. Students waited, watching. William carefully set his fork down, deliberate, unhurried. Then, for the first time all week, he looked Ryan directly in the eyes. Ryan mistook William's silence for fear. That's when he made his biggest mistake. He shoved William. Hard. Come on, Mercer. Do something. The cafeteria froze. Conversations died mid-sentence. Trays stopped scraping against tables. Even the lunch staff behind the counter paused, watching from a distance. Ryan Callowell had just shoved William Mercer, in front of everyone. Now, they all waited to see what would happen next. For a moment, William remained seated, thinking, calculating. His father's words echoed in his mind. You don't fight with anger. You fight with control. Slowly, he pushed his chair back and stood. No rush. No hesitation. Every movement precise. Effortless. Like a man warming up before workout. Ryan's smirk widened. Oh, we got a tough guy, he said, glancing at his friends. Gonna swing, Mercer? Gonna act like a thug now. William's expression didn't change. He simply tilted his head, studying Ryan, like a puzzle that didn't quite make sense. And that was when Ryan realized something was wrong. William wasn't nervous. He wasn't flinching. He wasn't even blinking. Ryan's grin faltered. Just a fraction. A hesitation. A subtle shift in weight. Like some primal instinct had kicked in. A warning, a whisper in the back of Ryan's mind. Maybe, just maybe, he'd made a mistake. But was already too late. Ryan shoved him again. This time William moved. Fast. Before Ryan's hands could fully extend, William's left hand shot up, gripping his wrist in one fluid motion. His right hand followed, lightning-fast, precise, clamping onto Ryan's elbow. Then, with almost no effort, William pivoted slightly, turning Ryan's own momentum against him. Ryan's feet left the ground. A second later, his back slammed onto the cafeteria floor. The impact echoed. For a moment, absolute silence. Ryan gasped, stunned. Flat on his back, sprawled across the tile. He blinked up at the ceiling, dazed, scrambling to sit up, eyes wide with confusion. His friends tensed, instinctively stepping forward. William didn't even glance at them. Instead, he crouched beside Ryan, his voice low even, "Don't touch me again." No threats, no insults, just a statement. And that made it so much worse. Ryan wasn't just beaten. He was dismissed. William stood, dusted his hands off, like he'd moved a chair, not a person, then picked up his tray. Without a single glance back, he walked away. The cafeteria remained frozen. Students stared, at Ryan, at William, at each other. Then, from somewhere in the back, a voice whispered, "Holy SH." And just like that, the floodgates opened. Whispers became murmurs. Murmurs became an eruption of excited chatter. Someone had caught the whole thing on their phone. Someone else was already texting about it. And Ryan? He just sat there, jaw clenched, hands curled into tight, white-knuckled fists. Because he knew, by the time the final bell rang, everyone in Redmond High would be talking about what happened. But this wasn't over. By the last period, the story had spread like wildfire. William Mercer had dropped Ryan Callowell in the cafeteria. Not with a punch. Not with a wild brawl. With a single, effortless move. And that's what made it impossible to ignore. If William had thrown hands, if it had turned into a messy fight, it would have been different. Just another school scuffle. Kids picking sides. Rumors twisting the details. Then eventually forgotten. But this was something else. William hadn't just beaten Ryan. He'd humiliated him. Made him look weak. Made him look helpless. And in a place like Redmond High, people didn't forget things like this. As William stepped out of the school building, he ignored the stares. Some kids watched him like they were seeing him for the first time. Others whispered the second his back was turned. A few just looked uneasy. Ryan wasn't outside. That would have been too obvious. But William wasn't naive. He knew how this worked. Guys like Ryan didn't just take humiliation and move on. They didn't dust themselves off and let it go. They waited. They plotted. They made sure that when they struck back, it mattered. William had seen it before, and he knew this wasn't over. At home, dinner had barely started when his mom noticed. She had a way of looking at him, tilting her head slightly, like she was scanning his face for hidden details. "Everything okay at school?" She set down her fork. Across the table, his dad glanced up. William shrugged. "Yeah, just a regular day." His mom didn't buy it. His dad just kept eating. That was the difference between them. His mom asked questions. His dad waited for answers. Later that night, his phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. Unknown, you think you're tough? You got lucky today. Unknown, watch your back. William stared at the screen. Then he exhaled, locked his phone, and set it face down on his desk. This wasn't unexpected. It wasn't even surprising. But now, he had a choice to make. Would he let it go? Pretend none of it happened? Or would he make sure Ryan, and everyone else, understood exactly who he was? Because whatever happened next, it was coming. Monday morning, something felt different. William knew before he even stepped inside. The quick glances, the hushed conversations that stopped the second he walked past. Confirmation. The story had grown legs. By the time he reached his locker, 2 freshmen had already scurried out of his way. A junior he didn't even know gave him an approving nod. And then came the ones who suddenly wanted to be his friend. Yo, Mercer, you really put Calloway on his ass, huh? Dude, I heard you barely even touched him. Just dropped like a sack of bricks. Bro, you got hands like that and you don't even talk? That's cold, man. William barely reacted. A glance. A nod. Nothing more. Because this wasn't respect. This was entertainment. They weren't looking at him like a person. They were looking at him like a spectacle. A rumor brought to life. And that's when he saw Ryan, standing in his usual spot near the main entrance. But something had changed. No cocky smirk. No easy confidence. Instead, Ryan stood stiff, fists clenched at his sides. He wasn't alone. Zach and Brandon flanked him just like always. But this time, they weren't laughing. Ryan met William's gaze for half a second. Then he looked away. William almost smirked. Almost. But he wasn't stupid enough to think Ryan had given up. Guys like him didn't just accept a loss. They waited for a rematch. Lunch. The tension was thick before William even sat down. Eyes followed him. Watching. Waiting. Like they expected Ryan to storm across the cafeteria. Like they thought round 2 was inevitable. But Ryan wasn't even there. His usual table empty. William had just started eating when someone sat across from him. Not one of Ryan's guys. A girl. Ava Sinclair. He hadn't spoken to her before. But he knew who she was. Smart. Confident. Ava Sinclair wasn't the type to follow the crowd. She set her drink down, studying him for a second. Then she said, you know, you didn't just beat Ryan. You humiliated him. William took a bite of his food. Chewed. Swallowed. He picked the fight. Ava smirked. Yeah. But you ended it. That's worse for him. William didn't respond. She leaned in slightly. Look, just be careful. Ryan's dad is on the school board. You think he's gonna let this slide? William met her gaze, steady. Unfazed. Does it look like I care? Ava exhaled, shaking her head. You should. She stood, picked up her tray. Just watch your back. Then she walked away. And for the first time since Friday, William felt something he hadn't before. Not anger. Not annoyance. Curiosity. Because whatever was coming next, it wasn't going to be another cafeteria fight. Wednesday. The energy at Redmond High had shifted again. Ryan Callowell wasn't just avoiding William. He was erasing him. No more comments. No more smug glances. No more games. Nothing. For some guys, that would have been enough. William had won. Wasn't that the point? But something felt off. And that feeling only grew when Ava found him after last period. She didn't waste time. Ryan's dad is trying to get you expelled. William barely reacted. For what? Ava scoffed. They don't need a reason. He's claiming you attacked Ryan. That it was unprovoked. He's pulling strings to make it stick. William wasn't surprised. He'd seen this play out before. Different place. Same script. A white kid starts something. A black kid finishes it. Suddenly, the rules don't apply the same way. He ran a hand over his face, inhaling slowly. So what do I do? Ava hesitated. Then, fight back. Not with fists. With proof. That night, William got to work. By morning, he had everything he needed. Screenshots of texts. Footage of the cafeteria fight, the full clip, not just the takedown. Witnesses willing to back him up. When he walked into school, he wasn't alone. Ava was with him. So were 2 other students. Kids he barely knew before all this. But they knew the truth. And that was enough. They marched straight to the principal's office. And by the time the meeting ended, Ryan's dad didn't get what he wanted. William wasn't expelled. Wasn't suspended. Nothing stuck. Because the truth wasn't just on his side. It was undeniable. Ryan didn't come back to school for the rest of the week. When he finally returned, he wasn't the same. Quieter. Less confident. Kept his head down. Voice lower. He wasn't afraid of William. But he understood. William hadn't just beaten him in a fight. He'd beaten him where it really mattered. And that's what people remembered. William never asked for respect. Never asked for attention. He just wanted to exist. Without being tested. Without being challenged. Without having to prove himself over and over again. But the reality? Some people only learn through consequences. And when you finally show them what you're capable of, they never forget. If this story resonated with you, hit subscribe and let us know in the comments. Have you ever had to prove yourself when you shouldn't have had to?